The espresso machine hissed behind me, steam rising in curls that smelled of burnt coffee and broken dreams. I wiped down the same spot on the counter for the third time, my lower back protesting with each circular motion. 5 months pregnant and pulling double shifts at Margaret's Cafe wasn't exactly how I'd imagined my life would turn out. But here I was, aproned and exhausted, trying not to think about the doctor's bill sitting unpaid on my kitchen table. "Kate, table 6 needs a refill," Lucy called from across the cafe, balancing 3 plates along her forearm with practiced ease. "And that guy at the window booth keeps checking his watch. Pretty sure he's waiting for someone," I nodded, grabbing the coffee pot with hands that had developed calluses in places I didn't know skin could toughen. The afternoon light filtered through Margaret's vintage lace curtains, casting patterns across worn wooden tables that had seen better decades. This place was caught in time, somewhere between shabby and charming, depending on how generous you felt. Today, exhausted and swollen-ankled, I wasn't feeling generous. The man at table 6 barely glanced up as I topped off his cup. Another businessman, another expensive watch, another person whose world I cleaned up after but never truly touched. I'd gotten good at being invisible. It was safer that way. "You look tired, honey," Margaret said, appearing at my elbow with that concerned expression she'd worn more frequently lately. Her silver hair was pinned back in its usual neat bun, and her eyes held the kind of knowing that came from running a neighborhood cafe for 30 years. "Why don't you take your break? That date of yours should be here any minute." My stomach nodded. The blind date. Jennifer from the morning shift had set it up with her cousin, insisting I needed to get back out there after everything that had happened. She didn't know the whole story. Nobody did. Nobody could. "I'm fine, Margaret, really." I smoothed my apron over the small bump I'd been hiding under loose clothing and strategic positioning behind counters. Just a few more orders to clear. The bell above the door chimed, and I turned automatically, years of service industry conditioning. A man entered, brushing rain from his shoulders. Medium height, pleasant face, slightly receding hairline. Bradley Thompson. My date. Right on time, dressed in business casual that screamed middle management and safe choice. He smiled when he saw me, the kind of smile that tried too hard. "Kate?" "That's me." I managed to smile back, untying my apron. "Give me just a second to clock out." "No rush. I'll grab that table by the window." I watched him settle into the booth, already pulling out his phone, and felt absolutely nothing. No flutter, no anticipation, just the dull acceptance of going through motions because that's what normal people did. Normal people went on dates. Normal people didn't spend their nights lying awake, wondering if the father of their child would ever stop looking for them. "He seems nice," Lucy whispered, grinning. "Very employed, very punctual, very not crazy." "The bar's that low, is it?" "For you? After everything? Yeah, it is." I clocked out and joined Bradley at the table, sliding into the seat across from him. Up close, I could see the effort he'd put in. Fresh haircut, cologne that wasn't overwhelming, nails trimmed. He'd tried. That should have meant something. "So," he began, setting his phone face down on the table. "Jennifer tells me you've been in the city for about 6 months?" "Around that, yes." I kept my answer vague, the way I'd learned to keep everything vague. "How about you?" "Born and raised here. Work in finance, nothing too exciting. I manage portfolios for a mid-size firm downtown." He paused, waiting for a reaction I didn't have the energy to perform. "Jennifer mentioned you worked here at the cafe? Is that, what you've always done?" There it was. The polite way of asking if I had ambition, if I was worth his time. I'd had a career once. A life. A penthouse view, and a closet full of clothes that cost more than I now made in 3 months. But that was before I understood what kind of man Anthony Roberts really was. "It pays the bills," I said simply. Bradley nodded, clearly trying to find common ground. "That's honest work. I respect that." You know, my mother always says—" The bell above the door chimed again. I didn't look up immediately. I was focused on Bradley's face, on maintaining the expression of polite interest that first dates required. But something changed in the air of the cafe. A shift, subtle but unmistakable, like the pressure drop before a storm. Lucy's voice faltered mid-sentence as she took an order at the counter. Margaret's hand stilled on the espresso machine. Even the background murmur of conversation seemed to quiet, as if the very walls recognized the presence of someone who commanded silence without asking for it. "Kate?" Bradley's voice sounded distant, muffled, because I'd made the mistake of looking toward the door. He stood in the entrance of Margaret's cafe like a wolf that had wandered into a henhouse, 6 feet of controlled power in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Anthony Roberts. The same sharp jaw, the same dark eyes that could switch from warm to ice in a heartbeat, the same way of standing that suggested he owned whatever room he occupied. Our eyes met across the length of the cafe. 7 months. I'd had 7 months of freedom, of building a quiet life where I could breathe without feeling his shadow. 7 months of telling myself I'd been smart, that I'd covered my tracks, that he'd moved on to easier prey. 7 months of lying to myself. "Kate?" Bradley repeated, following my gaze. "Do you know that guy?" Anthony's expression remained neutral, but I knew him well enough to read the microscopic changes, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his hand flexed once at his side before going still. He'd found me. However he'd managed it, through whatever network of connections and influence he commanded, he'd found me. And from the way he was looking at Bradley, then back at me, he'd found me on a date. "Excuse me a moment," I heard myself say, the words coming from somewhere outside my body. I stood on legs that felt disconnected from my brain, moving toward Anthony before conscious thought could stop me. Maybe I could intercept him, convince him to leave, protect Bradley from getting caught in whatever storm was about to break. I made it 3 steps before Anthony crossed the remaining distance in long, purposeful strides. Katerina. My full name, spoken in that low voice that used to make me shiver for entirely different reasons. "We need to talk." "This isn't the time," I said quietly, acutely aware of every eye in the cafe watching us. Margaret had stopped pretending to work the espresso machine. Lucy stood frozen with a coffee pot in hand. Bradley had risen from the booth, confusion and something harder, possessiveness maybe, crossing his face. "Is everything okay here?" Bradley called out, taking a step toward us. Anthony's gaze shifted to him, and I watched Bradley's confidence falter under the weight of it. There was something about Anthony that people could sense, even those who didn't know his name or his business. A predator's energy, barely leashed. "Everything's fine," I said quickly, positioning myself slightly between them. "This is just an old friend. I'll only be a minute." "Old friend?" Anthony's voice carried just enough volume for Bradley to hear, just enough edge to communicate exactly how inaccurate that description was. "Is that what we're calling it?" My hand moved instinctively to my stomach, a protective gesture I couldn't help, before I forced it back down to my side. But Anthony had seen. His eyes tracked the movement, and something shifted in his expression. Not softening, exactly, but focusing with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Outside," I said firmly. "Now." To my surprise, he nodded once and turned toward the door. I followed, feeling Bradley's confused stare burning into my back, hearing Lucy's sharp intake of breath, knowing that this careful life I'd built was about to come crashing down around me. The late afternoon air was cool and damp, rain-slicked pavement reflecting the neon signs of neighboring shops. Anthony stopped a few feet from the cafe entrance, close enough for privacy, far enough that Margaret's customers wouldn't hear every word through the old single-pane windows. 7 months, he said, his voice carefully controlled. 7 months, Kate. Do you have any idea what you put me through? Put you through? The words came out sharper than I intended. You put yourself through whatever you went through, Anthony. I left. That was my choice. Your choice. He laughed, a sound without humor. You disappeared in the middle of the night like a thief. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. I thought... He stopped, jaw working. I thought something had happened to you. Something did happen to me, I said quietly. I woke up to who you really are. His eyes hardened. And who am I, Kate? A man with enemies. A man who settles disputes with threats and worse. A man whose business partners end up in the Hudson River when deals go wrong. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. I'm not naive anymore, Anthony. I know what you are. You know nothing. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, different from Bradley's department store brand, something custom that probably had a waiting list. You ran before giving me a chance to explain. Explain what? The blood on your shirt? The conversation I overheard about handling the Brooklyn problem? What exactly needs explaining? A muscle ticked in his jaw. Context, nuance. The difference between what things look like and what they actually are. Does it matter? I asked, exhaustion seeping into my voice. Even if some of it wasn't what I thought, enough of it was. Enough to know I couldn't. I stopped myself before saying too much, before revealing the secret growing inside me. Couldn't what? His voice softened fractionally. Couldn't trust me. Couldn't love me. Couldn't stay, I finished. Behind us, the cafe door opened. Bradley stepped out, squaring his shoulders in a way that might have been impressive if he weren't facing Anthony Roberts. Kate, is this guy bothering you? Bradley's voice carried the forced confidence of someone who'd taken exactly one self-defense seminar and thought it qualified him for confrontation. I'm fine, Bradley. Really, just give me a few more minutes. I don't think so. Bradley moved to my side, actually putting a hand on my shoulder. I think your old friend here should leave. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Anthony's gaze fixed on Bradley's hand, on my shoulder, with an intensity that made my stomach drop. Take your hand off her. Each word was precisely enunciated, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with volume. Or what? Bradley, bless his ignorant courage, actually stepped closer. Look, pal, I don't know who you think you are, but Kate and I are on a date, so why don't you... Back off, Anthony interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. She's already taken. The words hung in the damp air between us, heavy with meaning and memory and claim. Excuse me? Bradley's hand fell from my shoulder. Kate, what is he talking about? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because what could I say? That he was wrong? That would be a lie. That he was right? That would reveal everything I'd been hiding. Anthony solved my dilemma by reaching into his jacket. Bradley actually flinched, and pulling out a small velvet box. Kate and I, he said, his eyes never leaving mine as he opened the box to reveal a diamond ring that caught the fading light like captured stars. Have some unfinished business to discuss. Don't we, Katerina? The ring. The same ring he'd shown me the night before I ran. The night I'd found the blood-stained shirt and overheard the phone call and understood that accepting this ring meant accepting everything that came with it. The danger, the moral compromises, the constant fear. I'm not having this conversation, I said, but my voice came out weaker than I intended. Then, we'll have a different one. Anthony closed the box, returning it to his pocket with deliberate care. About why you look exhausted. About why you're working double shifts at a cafe when you have a degree in art history. About why... His gaze dropped again to my midsection, and this time there was no hiding the knowledge in his eyes. You've been hiding from me for 7 months. He knew. Somehow he knew about the baby. Bradley was looking between us now, confusion giving way to understanding, and then to something that looked like hurt. "You're pregnant?" I couldn't answer. Couldn't move. The world had narrowed to Anthony's dark eyes, and the secret I'd carried alone for 5 months, now exposed in a cafe parking lot, with rain-dampened pavement reflecting the neon glow of the corner liquor store. "Kate?" Bradley's voice was small now, already withdrawing. "Is the baby his?" Still, I couldn't speak, couldn't lie, couldn't confirm. "Anthony did it for me." "Yes," he said simply. "The child is mine, as is Kate. She just needed some time to remember that." He turned to Bradley, and there was something almost sympathetic in his expression. "Go home. Forget this evening. Forget her number. It's better that way." "Kate?" Bradley looked at me one last time, hoping I'd deny it, hoping I'd choose the safe, boring date over the dangerous truth. I stayed silent. He left. I watched him walk to his sensible sedan, watched him pull out of the parking lot without looking back, watched the last possibility of a normal life disappear around the corner with his taillights. "You shouldn't have come here," I said, finally finding my voice. "You shouldn't have run." Anthony stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Did you really think I'd let you go? Did you really think there was anywhere in this city, this country, this world, that I wouldn't eventually find you?" I had to try. Why? The question held genuine confusion, maybe even hurt. "What did I ever do to make you think I'd hurt you?" "You hurt others," I said. "That was enough. To protect what's mine, to protect you." His hand rose, hesitated, then settled gently on my shoulder where Bradley's had been. "Do you know how many enemies I've made? How many people would love nothing more than to get to me through you? Running away didn't keep you safe, Kate. It put you in more danger. I've been fine. You've been working yourself into the ground while carrying my child." His voice roughened. "That's not fine. That's not even close to fine." Through the cafe window, I could see Margaret and Lucy trying to look busy, while obviously watching our every move. Other customers had their phones out. Someone was probably already posting about the scene to social media, spinning their own narratives. "I can't do this here," I said. "Then come with me. We'll talk somewhere private. So you can lock me in another penthouse? So I can make sure you're taking care of yourself." His hand moved from my shoulder to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with a gentleness that didn't match his reputation. "Look at you. When did you last sleep a full night? When did you last eat something that wasn't leftovers from the cafe?" Tears threatened, born from exhaustion and hormones, and the terrible relief of not carrying this alone anymore, of someone else knowing, even if that someone was the man I'd run from. "Why do you even care?" I whispered. "You could have anyone. Someone from your world. Someone who wouldn't run, wouldn't question, wouldn't—" "But I don't want anyone," he interrupted. "I want you. I've always wanted you. From the moment you corrected my art history at that gallery opening, when you had no idea who I was and didn't care about impressing me. I want the woman who argued with me about Caravaggio's use of light, who made me laugh, who saw me as Anthony, not Anthony Roberts." His forehead touched mine. "I want the mother of my child, my family. Your family comes with conditions I can't accept. Then we'll negotiate." He pulled back enough to look me in the eye. "I'm good at negotiations, Kate. Finding middle ground. Making deals that work for both parties. Give me a chance to make this work. For us. For our baby." A car horn blared from the street, breaking the moment. Reality crashed back in. We were still standing outside Margaret's cafe, still providing entertainment for curious onlookers, still at an impasse that couldn't be resolved on a rain-slick sidewalk. "I need time," I said. "You've had 7 months. I need time to think, to process this, to—" I gestured vaguely at the space between us, at the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. Anthony studied my face for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket again. I didn't flinch this time, and pulled out a business card. 24 hours, he said, pressing the card into my palm. Think all you want. But know this, Kate. I'm not walking away again. From you, from our child, from what we could have. The only question is whether we do this the easy way or the hard way. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He stepped back, creating distance that felt both relieving and terrifying. Call me before midnight tomorrow, or I'll make the decision for both of us. You can't just... I can, he interrupted, and I will, because I've learned something in 7 months without you, Katerina. I learned that nothing works without you in it. Not the business, not the empire, not my life. So yes, I can and I will do whatever it takes to bring you home. The question is whether you'll come willingly. He turned and walked toward a black car I hadn't noticed parked across the street. A driver emerged, opening the rear door with practiced efficiency. Anthony paused before getting in, looking back at me one last time. I love you, he said, loud enough for me to hear, quiet enough that it felt private despite the audience. I loved you when you left. I loved you through every day you were gone. And I'll love you and our child for every day that comes. That's not a negotiation, Kate. That's a fact. Then he was in the car, and the car was pulling away, and I was standing alone in the damp evening with a business card growing warm in my palm, and a future that had just become infinitely more complicated. Lucy burst through the cafe door. Holy hell, Kate. Was that Anthony Roberts? The Anthony Roberts? Do you have any idea who... She stopped, seeing my face. Oh, honey. You knew exactly who he was, didn't you? I nodded mutely. And the baby? Another nod. Well, Lucy said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders and guiding me back toward the cafe. I think you're going to need more than coffee for this conversation. The apartment I'd rented was a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood where the landlord didn't ask too many questions if your rent came in cash. No doorman, no security cameras, no trail. I'd thought I'd been so clever. I climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, the other cradling my lower back. Each step was a reminder of how much my body had changed, how much everything had changed. The business card Anthony had given me felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket pocket. Mrs. Wilson? I froze on the 3rd-floor landing. An elderly woman stood in her doorway, the one who always smiled at me in the hallway, but whose name I'd deliberately never learned. Getting close to neighbors meant questions, conversations, connections I couldn't afford. Yes? There were some men here earlier, looking for you. Her face creased with concern. Very polite, very well-dressed, but something about them made me nervous. I told them I didn't know which apartment was yours. My heart stuttered. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are you in some kind of trouble, dear? Because if you need help, my son is a police officer. I'm fine, I lied, already moving past her toward the next flight of stairs. Just an ex-boyfriend who won't take no for an answer. Nothing I can't handle. But my hands shook as I unlocked my apartment door. How long had Anthony known where I lived? Had he been watching, waiting, gathering information before making his move? The thought of his men here, in my building, talking to my neighbors, made my skin crawl. Inside, everything looked untouched. My secondhand furniture, my thrift store dishes, my carefully maintained space that held nothing of my old life. But now I looked at it through Anthony's eyes and saw what he must have seen. Poverty, struggle, his child's mother living in conditions he'd never allow. My phone rang. Unknown number. I knew who it would be, even before I answered. You had me followed. Not a question. I had you protected. Anthony's voice came through clear and calm. There's a difference, Kate. Did you really think I'd find you and then just walk away? Leave you unguarded? I don't need guards. Your neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, disagrees. She was quite concerned about the rough-looking men she saw loitering near the building last week. He paused. Those weren't my men, Kate. I only sent mine today, after I'd confirmed your location. Someone else has been watching you. Ice flooded my veins. You're lying. Trying to scare me into coming somewhere I can actually keep you safe? Yes, but I'm not lying. I heard papers rustling. 3 men, Eastern European by accent according to Mrs. Kowalski's description. They asked about you specifically. Used your old name, actually. Katerina Mitchell, not Kate Wilson. My maiden name. The name I'd dropped when I tried to disappear. If someone was using that name, they knew who I'd been. Who I'd been with. Who are they? That's what I'm trying to find out. His voice hardened. Which is why you need to stop being stubborn and let me protect you. You're not just Kate Wilson's struggling waitress anymore. You're Katerina Mitchell, the woman who disappeared from Anthony Roberts' life without explanation. That makes you interesting to a lot of very dangerous people. I sank onto my sagging couch, the springs protesting beneath me. This is exactly why I left. This life, this danger, these complications. And yet, here you are, in more danger alone than you ever were with me. At least when you were with me, people knew better than to touch you. He sighed. I'm not having this conversation over the phone. I'm sending a car. Be ready in 20 minutes. I'm not going anywhere with... Fine. Then I'll come there. We can have this discussion in your apartment with questionable locks and thin walls. I'm sure your neighbors would love the entertainment. He had me cornered and we both knew it. Where are we going? Somewhere secure. Somewhere we can talk without an audience. A pause. Somewhere with a decent meal. When did you last eat something that wasn't cafe leftovers, Kate? Stop asking me that. Stop avoiding the answer. His tone softened fractionally. 20 minutes. The car is already on its way. He hung up before I could argue further. I changed quickly, trading my cafe uniform for jeans and a loose sweater that hid my bump. The bathroom mirror showed me what Anthony had seen. Dark circles under my eyes, cheekbones sharper than they should be, exhaustion written in every line of my face. I'd been so focused on staying hidden, on working enough to cover rent and bills and saving for the baby, that I'd forgotten to take care of myself. The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a dark suit that screamed professional security. Not threatening, just present. I opened the door. Ms. Mitchell? He was older than I expected, maybe late 40s, with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen things. I'm James. Mr. Roberts sent me to escort you. I have identification if you'd like to see it. The courtesy threw me. I'd expected Anthony's men to be thugs, all intimidation and barely concealed violence. James felt more like a Secret Service agent, professional and controlled. It's fine, I said, grabbing my jacket. Let's go. The car was a black sedan, understated compared to the obvious luxury Anthony usually preferred. James opened the rear door, and I slid in, catching a whiff of new leather and expensive cologne. Anthony wasn't inside. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or disappointed. Mr. Roberts will meet you at the destination, James said, pulling smoothly into traffic. It's about 15 minutes. There's water in the console if you'd like. I took the water, suddenly realizing how thirsty I was. How long have you worked for Anthony? 12 years, ma'am. And what exactly do you do for him? James met my eyes in the rearview mirror. I make sure people he cares about stay safe. People like me? People exactly like you. He navigated around a slower car with practiced ease. Mr. Roberts is many things, Ms. Mitchell, but careless with what he values isn't one of them. The fact that he couldn't find you for 7 months drove him half mad. Respectfully, you should know that. I settled back in the seat, one hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. Did he have you looking for me? Everyone was looking for you, ma'am. Every resource, every contact. He was convinced something terrible had happened. James paused. It's not my place to say, but watching him these past months, I've never seen him like that. Not over business, not over threats, only over you. That's not comfort, that's obsession. Sometimes, James said quietly, the line between the two is thinner than we'd like, especially when someone we love vanishes without a word. We drove through neighborhoods that grew progressively nicer, the buildings newer, the streets cleaner. I recognized the area as we approached. This was where Anthony's legitimate businesses operated, the restaurants and clubs that served as fronts for whatever else he did in the shadows. The car pulled up to a restaurant I'd been to once before, early in our relationship. Bella Vista, an Italian place with a terrace overlooking the river. I'd worn a dress I couldn't afford, and let Anthony order wine I couldn't pronounce, drunk on the attention of a man who looked at me like I was the only person in the room. He's waiting inside, James said, opening my door. Top floor, private dining room. My legs felt shaky as I entered. The hostess recognized me, or recognized that I was expected, and led me immediately to the elevator. The restaurant's main floor buzzed with the dinner crowd, couples and groups who had no idea they were dining in an establishment owned by a man whose legitimate business interests were the least interesting thing about him. The elevator opened onto the top floor, which I'd never seen before. A single private room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights reflecting off the dark water. One table, already set for two. Anthony stood at the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the view. He turned when he heard the elevator. You came. Relief flickered across his face before he controlled it. Thank you. Did I have a choice? You always have a choice, Kate. I might not like your choices, but you have them. He gestured to the table. Sit, please. You must be exhausted. I was, and the chairs looked a lot more comfortable than anything in my apartment. I sat, and immediately a waiter appeared. Not the casual server from downstairs, but someone who moved with the discretion of long practice in serving people who valued privacy. The doctor recommended menu, the waiter said, placing dishes in front of me without asking what I wanted. Protein-rich, with the supplements she suggested. I stared at the food. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, a side of pasta that smelled like heaven. Then at Anthony. What doctor? He took the seat across from me. The one I've had reviewing your medical records from the clinic you've been attending. Don't look at me like that. Your prenatal care has been minimal at best, Kate. Someone needed to make sure you and the baby are getting what you need. You can't just... My medical records are private. HIPAA has exceptions when creative pressure is applied. He picked up his wine glass, then set it down again, as if remembering I couldn't drink. Eat. We'll argue after you've had some real food. The smell was making my mouth water despite my anger. I picked up my fork, telling myself it was for the baby, not because Anthony was right. He watched me eat for a moment, then spoke quietly. You're anemic. Did you know that? Low iron, low B12. The doctor says you're probably not taking the vitamins you need. Vitamins are expensive, and you've been choosing between them and rent. It wasn't a question. Kate, why didn't you... He stopped, jaw working. Why didn't you come to me when you found out you were pregnant? Because I'd already left. Because I knew what you'd do. What would I do? He leaned forward. Tell me what you think I'd do. This. I gestured at the restaurant, the food, the entire situation. Take over. Make decisions for me. Trap me with concern and resources and making it impossible to say no. Would it be so terrible? His voice was quiet. Being cared for? Having help? Not doing this alone. The food blurred as tears threatened. Pregnancy hormones, I told myself. Just hormones. Not the terrible ache of relief at having someone else shoulder even a fraction of the burden. I can't be who you need me to be, I said. I can't live in your world, Anthony. I can't accept what you do, who you are. Who I am, he interrupted, is someone who loves you. Everything else is negotiable. Everything else is who you are, the business, the empire, the things you do to maintain it. That's not separate from you. It's part of you. He stood, moving to the window, his back to me. My father built this organization from nothing. Came over from Ireland with nothing but anger and ambition, carved out a place in a city that didn't want him. He taught me that power is the only thing that keeps you safe, that respectable society will always look down on people like us, unless we make them too afraid to do it. I'd heard pieces of his history before, but never this. Never the anger underneath the control. When he died, Anthony continued, I inherited everything, the businesses, the connections, the enemies. I was 23 years old and suddenly responsible for 200 people's livelihoods, their families, their futures. You know what I learned? What? That my father was both right and wrong. Power does protect you, but fear only takes you so far. Respect, real respect, comes from being someone people want to work with, not just someone they're afraid to cross. He turned to face me. I've spent 10 years legitimizing this organization, Kate, moving money into legal ventures, cutting ties with the worst elements, building something my children could be proud of. Your children. I placed a hand over my stomach. You've thought about this. About a family. I've thought about nothing else since the moment I realized you were gone. He moved back to the table, dropping to one knee beside my chair. I know what I am, Kate. I know the things I've done, the choices I've made. Some of them keep me awake at night, but everything I've done, everything I am, it's all been to build something that lasts, something worth protecting. And now that includes you. That includes our baby. By controlling me, by keeping you safe. His hand covered mine on my stomach. Do you know what you're carrying? Not just a baby. A Roberts. My heir. There are people who would kill for the opportunity to use that against me. That's not paranoia, Kate. That's reality. Those men watching your building, they weren't selling Girl Scout cookies. You don't know they were connected to you. No, he admitted, but I know they weren't there by accident. And I know that until I find out who sent them and why, you're in danger. Especially living alone in an apartment with locks I could pick with a paperclip. I wanted to argue, but the fear I'd been pushing down since Mrs. Kowalski mentioned the men came flooding back. So what do you want? For me to move back into your penthouse? Play house while you conduct your business? I want you to let me protect you, both of you. His hand pressed gently against my stomach, and I felt the baby kick in response, as if recognizing its father's touch. His eyes widened. Was that? She kicks a lot, I said softly, especially in the evening. She. Wonder colored his voice. You said she. We're having a daughter? I nodded and watched something transform in Anthony's face. Not softening exactly, but opening. Vulnerability I'd rarely seen from him. A daughter, he repeated. I have a daughter. You have a responsibility, I corrected. That's different from having control over our lives. Then help me understand what you need. What would make you feel safe without feeling trapped? He was still kneeling beside my chair, still touching my stomach, still looking at me like I was something precious. I'm not unreasonable, Kate. Talk to me. I don't know, I admitted. I don't know how to reconcile the man who's being gentle right now with the man I overheard ordering someone to handle the Brooklyn problem permanently. I don't know how to trust that this, I gestured between us, isn't just another form of control, The Brooklyn problem, he said slowly, was a real estate developer trying to force elderly tenants out of rent-controlled apartments using intimidation and violence. Handling it permanently meant buying the building and protecting the tenants. But you left before I could explain that. And the blood on your shirt? From breaking up a fight at one of my clubs, I got between two idiots with knives before someone got killed. He stood, frustration showing. I'm not a saint, Kate. I won't pretend to be. But I'm not the monster you've built in your head either. I'm a man trying to protect what's his while building something better for the next generation. Our generation. The waiter appeared, clearing plates with silent efficiency. When he left, Anthony poured himself a measure of whiskey from a decanter on the sideboard. I have a proposition, he said. Move into the guest house on my property. Separate entrance, separate space, your own domain. I won't enter without permission. You'll have security, medical care, everything you need, and time. Time for us to figure this out before our daughter arrives. And if I say no? He took a sip of whiskey, considering. Then I'll assign security to your apartment building. You'll notice them, your neighbors will notice them, and everyone will start asking questions you don't want to answer. You'll also find that your landlord suddenly becomes very interested in renovating your building, requiring all tenants to relocate temporarily to places I control. That's not a choice. That's coercion. That's reality, he said flatly. I told you this afternoon. The question isn't whether I protect you. It's whether we do this the easy way or the hard way. I'd prefer easy, but I'm prepared for either. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucy. Are you okay? That guy looks serious. Do I need to call someone? I showed Anthony the text. People are worried about me. Then reassure them. Tell them you're safe, because you are. Safer with me than you've been in 7 months of hiding. He set down his glass. I know I'm backing you into a corner, Kate. I know this isn't how you wanted this to happen. But our daughter kicks in the evening. You're anemic and exhausted, and someone is watching your building with unclear intentions. I don't have the luxury of courting you slowly while pretending those things aren't true. He was right, and I hated that he was right. Hated the practicality of his arguments, the logic that made my independence look like dangerous stubbornness. Okay, I said quietly. The guest house, but with conditions. Name them. I keep my job. I'm not sitting around being decorative while you work. Agreed, though I'd prefer you reduce your hours. I make my own medical decisions. You can pay for the care, but you don't get to override my choices. Fair. And if I decide to leave after the baby is born, you don't stop me. You don't track me down again. You let me go. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. If, after our daughter is born, you genuinely want to leave, not out of fear, but out of honest desire for a different life, I'll let you go. But I'll still be in my daughter's life, Kate. That's non-negotiable. It was more than I'd expected, less than I wanted. Exactly the kind of compromise Anthony excelled at, giving me what I'd asked for while ensuring he still got what he needed. When would I move? Tonight, tomorrow morning at the latest. He saw my expression. The guest house is ready. Has been for 2 months since I confirmed you were in the city. I was always going to find you, Kate. This was always going to happen. The only variable was how much time you'd waste fighting the inevitable. The arrogance should have angered me. Instead, I felt a strange exhaustion, the kind that came from carrying a weight alone for too long and finally having someone else shoulder part of the burden. I need to tell Margaret I'm leaving the cafe. You're not leaving. You're reducing hours. There's a difference. He pulled out his phone. I'll have James take you back to pack. You don't need to bring furniture. The guest house is furnished. Just personal items, clothes, whatever makes you feel at home. This is happening very fast. It's been happening for 7 months, he corrected. I'm just accelerating the conclusion. He stood, offering his hand. "Come on. Let's get you settled before you fall asleep on your feet." I took his hand, letting him pull me up. For a moment we stood close, his hand still holding mine, and I remembered what it felt like to be with him, the safety, the intensity, the sense that nothing could touch me when I was under his protection. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," I said. "Forgive me for what? Finding you? Wanting to take care of you? For being who you are, for making this complicated." His other hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheek. "Life is complicated, Kate. People are complicated. But some things are simple. I love you. I love our daughter. And I will move heaven and earth to keep you both safe. Everything else we'll figure out as we go." He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, soft and careful, a question more than a claim. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine. 24 hours, I said. "You've made your decision in 4. I'll take that as progress." "Don't get cocky. Too late." He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all evening. "I've got you back. I'm allowed to be a little cocky." The drive back to my apartment felt different than the drive to the restaurant. James still drove with professional efficiency, but now I was seeing the route differently, not as an abduction, but as a transition. One life ending, another beginning. Whether that was freedom or a different kind of trap, I'd have 7 months to find out. The guest house wasn't what I expected. I'd pictured something small, maybe charming in a deliberately rustic way, the kind of space wealthy people created to feel bohemian without actually experiencing discomfort. What I got instead was a 2-story cottage that looked like it belonged in the English countryside, complete with climbing roses and mullioned windows that caught the morning light. "It was my mother's studio," Anthony said, watching me take it in from the circular driveway. "She painted. Watercolors mostly. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to change it much." I'd never heard him mention his mother. In all our time together, he'd spoken of his father's legacy, the empire he'd inherited, but never the woman who'd raised him. "When did she die?" 6 years ago, cancer." His voice was carefully neutral, the way it got when he was controlling emotion. "She would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who'd argue with me about art instead of just agreeing to look cultured." James appeared with my 2 suitcases. Everything I owned that mattered fit in 2 bags, a thought that should have been depressing, but instead felt liberating. Start fresh. Build something new. "I'll leave you to settle in," Anthony said. "The kitchen is stocked. Wi-Fi password is on the counter. If you need anything, there's an intercom system that connects to the main house." He paused at the door of the car that would take him back to whatever business demanded his attention. "I meant what I said about space. This is your domain. I won't intrude." "Thank you." He nodded, then hesitated. "There's a doctor's appointment scheduled for tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Dr. Sarah Harrison. She specializes in high-risk pregnancies. I'm not high risk. You're anemic, underweight, and under stress. That makes you higher risk than I'm comfortable with." His tone left no room for argument. "James will drive you. I'll be there. But only if you want me to be." The offer surprised me. I'd expected demands, not requests. "I'll think about it." "Fair enough." He slid into the car, but before James could close the door, he looked back at me. "Kate, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're safe. Whatever else happens, remember that." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a guest house that cost more than most people's actual houses, surrounded by someone else's carefully curated version of comfort. Inside, the space was both museum and home. His mother's paintings still hung on the walls, watercolors of the estate grounds, portraits of a young Anthony that showed the boy before he became the man, landscapes of Ireland that must have meant something to her. Her brushes still sat in ceramic holders by the north-facing windows. Her books lined the shelves, spines creased from reading. It should have felt invasive, living among a dead woman's things. Instead, it felt like being trusted with something precious. The bedroom upstairs had been updated. A new bed, fresh linens, a closet that had been cleared for my use. But the original furniture remained. A writing desk with carved legs, a vanity with an oval mirror, a rocking chair positioned by the window that overlooked the gardens. I sat in the rocking chair, one hand on my belly, and let myself cry for the first time in months. Not from sadness exactly, but from the overwhelming release of tension I'd been holding. Here, I didn't have to pretend to be fine, didn't have to smile through exhaustion or hide my condition, or calculate every penny. Here, I could just be. My phone rang. Lucy. "Okay, I've given you 12 hours to process," she said, without preamble. "Now tell me what the hell is going on. Who was that man? Are you safe? Do I need to organize a rescue mission?" Despite everything, I laughed. "I'm safe. It's complicated. Honey, when a man who looks like that crashes your blind date and announces you're already taken, it's beyond complicated. It's Shakespearean. Give me something." "He's the father." The words came easier than expected. "The baby's father. We were together before I moved here. It ended badly. I didn't tell him about the pregnancy." "And he just found you?" "Apparently he's been looking for 7 months." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "That's either incredibly romantic or incredibly terrifying." "Both," I admitted. "Definitely both. Where are you now? Please tell me you're not locked in some basement." I looked around at the sun-drenched room, the expensive furniture, the view of manicured gardens. "I'm in his guest house, on his estate. It's nice, actually. Too nice." Kate Wilson, are you telling me you're shacking up with a man who looks like a model and has a guest house? Plural? As in, his house is big enough to have additional houses? It's temporary, until we figure things out. Uh-huh. And how does Bradley fit into this picture? Bradley. Poor, boring, safe Bradley who just wanted a normal date with a normal woman, and instead got caught in whatever drama I'd been running from. Bradley doesn't fit. That's kind of the point. "You could have told me," Lucy said quietly. "About the baby, about the father, about being in trouble. I would have helped. I know. I'm sorry. I just needed to handle it myself for a while. And now I'm letting someone else help. We'll see how long it takes before I regret it." After we hung up, I explored the rest of the guest house. The kitchen was indeed stocked. Not just basics, but the specific things I'd been craving. Strawberries, good bread, the particular brand of herbal tea that helped with nausea. Someone had been paying attention, cataloging my preferences. The thought should have creeped me out. Instead, I found myself eating strawberries at the kitchen counter, appreciating the simple pleasure of good food I hadn't had to budget for. A knock at the door interrupted my third strawberry. I opened it to find a woman in her late 50s, professionally dressed, but with warm eyes and a kind smile. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Helen. Mr. Roberts asked me to check if you need anything. I manage the main household, but I'm here to help with whatever you require." "I'm fine, thank you. There's a car coming tomorrow at 9:30 for your doctor's appointment. And Mr. Roberts wanted me to remind you that you're welcome to join him for dinner this evening at 7, but there's no pressure if you'd prefer to settle in." Dinner with Anthony. A date that wasn't a date. A gesture that was probably calculated but felt genuine. I thought of eating alone in this beautiful space versus facing whatever conversation awaited in the main house. "Tell him I'll be there." Helen's smile widened. "Wonderful. Casual dress. He tends to work late and eat in the study rather than the formal dining room." After she left, I went upstairs and looked through the clothes that had mysteriously appeared in my closet. My own things from the apartment hung beside new items. maternity clothes in my size and style. Nothing too flashy, but clearly expensive. A navy wrap dress caught my eye. Soft fabric that would accommodate my bump without advertising it. I dressed carefully, surprised to find myself caring what Anthony thought. It had been so long since I'd dressed for someone else, since appearance mattered for reasons beyond workplace professionalism. At exactly 7, I walked the stone path from the guest house to the main house. The estate was beautiful in the evening light, gardens giving way to manicured lawns, the house itself a sprawling combination of old money and modern security, cameras, subtle but present. Guards likewise. Anthony's world had always been this way. Beautiful surfaces with steel underneath. Helen let me in and guided me to a study I'd never seen before. Unlike the formal rooms Anthony used for business, this space felt personal. Leather chairs worn comfortable from use, shelves filled with books that showed signs of actual reading, a fireplace with logs ready but unlit. Anthony stood at the window, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He'd changed from his earlier suit into dark slacks and a white dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Casual for him, but still more polished than most men managed in formal wear. He turned when I entered, finishing his conversation quickly. "Kate, you came. You invited. It seemed rude to refuse. Since when do you worry about being rude to me?" A slight smile. "Sit. Please. Dinner should be here in a few minutes." I took one of the leather chairs, sinking into comfort that felt earned. "In where? Do you have a kitchen in your study?" "I have a kitchen in most rooms if I need one." He poured water for both of us, apparently remembering I couldn't drink the wine that sat open on the side table. "But Helen prepares dinner in the main kitchen and brings it here when I'm working late. Old habit from when my father was alive. He believed business never stopped, so meals had to adapt." Sounds exhausting. It was. He sat across from me, looking suddenly tired. He built this empire through sheer force of will and absolute refusal to show weakness. I spent my whole childhood watching him work 20-hour days, making decisions that affected hundreds of lives, never admitting doubt or fear. Is that the father you want to be? The question landed hard. I could see it in his face, the recognition of a fear he'd probably never voiced. "No," he said finally. "I want to be the father who's there, who knows his daughter's favorite color and her fears and her dreams, who she comes to with problems instead of hiding from." His eyes met mine. "I want to be what my father wasn't, but I don't know how to do that and also be what's necessary to keep her safe. Maybe you start by trusting that she doesn't need you to be invincible, just present." He was quiet, absorbing that. Then, "Tell me about the last 7 months, not the practical details. I know where you worked, where you lived. Tell me what you felt, what you thought about." "Why?" "Because I spent 7 months imagining the worst, imagining you hurt, scared, in danger. I need to replace those images with the truth, whatever it is." I pulled my feet up under me, getting comfortable in a way I never would have in our old life. Funny how running away had made me less formal with him, not more. At first I was terrified, I admitted. Convinced you'd find me within days. I changed my name, paid for everything in cash, avoided cameras. I felt like a fugitive. You were a fugitive, from me. Then I found out I was pregnant, and suddenly I wasn't running from something. I was running towards something. This future where I could have my baby in peace, where she wouldn't grow up in a world of violence and secrets. But I looked away. But it was lonely, pretending to be someone else. Not having anyone I could tell the truth. Working myself exhausted to save for a future I wasn't sure would ever happen. My hand moved to my stomach. And terrified something would happen to her, because I couldn't afford proper care or good food or any of the things babies need. Did you ever think about coming back? Every day. The admission surprised even me. Every single day I woke up and thought about calling you, asking for help. But then I'd remember why I left, and I'd convince myself I was doing the right thing. And now? What do you think now? Before I could answer, Helen arrived with dinner. Pasta that smelled like heaven. Salad. Bread still warm from the oven. She set everything out with practiced efficiency and disappeared again, leaving us alone with food and questions and 7 months of absence to navigate. Eat first, Anthony said. Then we'll continue this. We ate in surprising silence, comfortable rather than tense. Anthony watched me eat with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt almost tender, like he was cataloging every bite to ensure I was properly nourished. The doctor tomorrow, I said finally. Will you come? His fork stilled halfway to his mouth. Do you want me to? I think I do. I swallowed hard. I think I've been doing this alone long enough. And she's your daughter too. You should be there. Something shifted in his expression, walls coming down brick by brick. Thank you. For letting me in. Don't make me regret it. I'll try not to. He set down his fork. I know you don't trust me yet. Not fully. But I want you to understand something about why I am the way I am. He stood, moving to a cabinet built into the wall. From it, he pulled a folder, worn at the edges from handling. He set it in front of me. What's this? The reason I can't just walk away from the business. The reason I take security seriously. The reason I react the way I do when people I care about are threatened. I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, police reports, news clippings. A car, twisted metal and shattered glass. A woman, beautiful even in the grainy newspaper photo, identified as Margaret Roberts, Anthony's mother. I thought you said she died of cancer. I lied. His voice was flat. She was killed. Someone planted a bomb in her car meant for my father. She was collateral damage in a war between organizations. An innocent woman murdered because someone wanted to hurt my father and didn't care who else got destroyed in the process. I looked at the photos, the reports, seeing a young Anthony in one image, maybe 19 or 20, standing rigid in a dark suit at what must have been her funeral. I'm so sorry. That's when I learned the most important lesson of my life, he continued. In this world, the people you love are your greatest vulnerability. Your enemies will always target them first because they know it's the fastest way to destroy you. My father never recovered from losing her. He became harder, more ruthless, more paranoid, and I became him, just in a different way. So you decided to never love anyone? I decided to never love anyone I couldn't protect absolutely. He took the folder back, closing it with careful hands. Until you. You walked into my world already protected by nothing but your own intelligence and bravery, and you didn't need my protection because you didn't know you were in danger. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I could just be Anthony, not Anthony Roberts, heir to an empire built on blood and fear. And then I found out the truth. And then you found out I'm both. The man who loves art and good wine and you. And the man who does what's necessary to protect what's his. He knelt in front of my chair, taking my hands in his. I can't change what I am, Kate. Can't walk away from this life without endangering everyone who depends on me. But I can promise you this. I will never let what happened to my mother happen to you. I will never let our daughter become collateral damage in someone else's war. Tears spilled over before I could stop them. How? How do you promise that when the world you live in is so dangerous? By being smarter, stronger, more careful. His thumbs brushed my tears away. By making it known that anyone who touches you or our child will face consequences so severe that even thinking about it becomes unthinkable. By building walls so high and deep that no threat can reach you. That's not living, Anthony. That's existing in a fortress. Then help me find another way. His voice cracked slightly. Because I don't know how to do this differently. I don't know how to love you without trying to protect you absolutely. Show me how to give you freedom without dying of fear that something will happen to you. I pulled my hands free, placing them on either side of his face, making him look at me. You start by trusting me. Trusting that I can make choices, even risky ones. That I can live with uncertainty because the alternative, living in a cage, even a golden one, is worse than the risk. And if I can't, if the fear is too great, then we're going to have problems. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his. Because I can't be your mother, Anthony. I can't be the woman who gets protected so much she can't breathe. I can't raise our daughter in that environment. What if I lose you? What if you never really have me because you're so afraid of losing me that you strangle what we could have? We stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, both scared of different things but scared together. Compromise, he said finally. We find middle ground. You get freedom, I get peace of mind. We figure out what that looks like day by day. Okay. I pulled back enough to see his face. Starting with tomorrow, the doctor's appointment. I make my own medical decisions, but you can be there. You can ask questions, have input, be part of it. But final choices are mine. Agreed. And I keep working at the cafe. Maybe fewer hours, but I keep some independence, some part of my life that's mine. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. 3 days a week, not the late shifts, and James or someone similar nearby. 2 days with someone nearby. 3 days I go on my own like a normal person. Kate, compromise, remember? You give, I give. He studied me for a long moment. 4 days. James drives you there and back, but stays in the car unless you call for him. 4 days, James drives, stays nearby but not obviously watching. I held out my hand. Deal? He took my hand, but instead of shaking it, he brought it to his lips. Deal. But I reserve the right to renegotiate if circumstances change. Circumstances like what? Like if those men watching your old building turn out to be connected to something dangerous. Like if new threats emerge. Like if... He stopped himself. Like if my fear gets too loud to ignore. Then you talk to me about it. You don't make unilateral decisions and tell me it's for my own good. I'll try. You'll do better than try, or this won't work. A slight smile. There's the woman I fell in love with. I was wondering when she'd show up again. She's been here the whole time, just scared and tired and pretending to be someone smaller than she is. Anthony stood, pulling me up with him. Come on. There's something I want to show you before you go back to the guest house. He led me through the main house, rooms I'd seen before and rooms I hadn't, until we reached a door I'd never noticed. Behind it, a staircase led up to what must have been the attic. After you, he said. The space at the top of the stairs took my breath away. Someone had converted the entire attic into a studio. North-facing windows, proper lighting, easels and canvases, and every art supply imaginable. His mother's studio, recreated. When? I whispered. I started 2 months ago after I confirmed you were in the city. I thought... He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly uncertain. I thought if I could give you a space to create, a space that was yours, you might forgive me for everything else. I walked through the room, touching easels and brushes and paints that were mine before I'd even known they existed. An entire wall of canvases, stretched and primed and waiting. A comfortable chair positioned to catch the best light. A small table with books on technique and color theory. You remember, I said, picking up one of the books, that I wanted to paint. I mentioned it once, months ago. I remember everything you ever told me." He stayed by the door, giving me space to explore. "I remember you said art history was what you studied, but painting was what you loved. I remember you standing in front of a Rothko at the gallery and saying you wanted to understand color the way he did. I remember every conversation we ever had about beauty and meaning and what art does to the human heart." I turned to face him, this complicated man who'd built me a studio in his attic while simultaneously having me watched and tracked. "This is too much. It's not even close to enough." He moved into the room, standing beside me at the window that overlooked the gardens below. "I can't give you back the 7 months we lost. Can't undo the fear or the loneliness or the mistakes I made that drove you away. But I can give you this. Space to create, to think, to be yourself without me hovering. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, you'll let me watch you paint sometimes. See the world through your eyes instead of my own. You're trying very hard. I'm trying to keep you." He turned to face me. "I know the difference between forcing someone to stay and making them want to. I'm hoping this is the latter." I looked around the studio, at the care and thought put into every detail. Then at Anthony, standing in the fading evening light, looking simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. "Thank you," I said, "for this, for trying, for letting me have something that's mine. Always." He checked his watch. "It's late. You should rest. Big day tomorrow with the doctor. Will you walk me back to the guest house?" Surprise flickered across his face. Of course. We walked in comfortable silence through the cooling evening air, the estate peaceful around us. At the guest house door, he hesitated. "Can I—" He gestured vaguely. "Can I kiss you goodnight?" The request, not demand, made me smile. "Yes." He stepped close, one hand cupping my face, the other resting gently on the small of my back. His lips met mine softly, carefully. A question and an answer and a promise all at once. When he pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine again. "I love you," he whispered. "I've loved you through every moment of the last 7 months. I'll love you through every moment that comes." "I'm not there yet," I admitted, "but I'm trying to find my way back. That's enough. That's more than enough. One more soft kiss. Sleep well, Kate. I'll see you tomorrow." I watched him walk back to the main house, this man who was both my greatest fear and my strongest protection. Then I went inside, climbed the stairs to the bedroom with the rocking chair by the window, and let myself believe, just for tonight, that maybe this could work. Maybe love and fear could coexist. Maybe protection and freedom weren't mutually exclusive. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ruins of what we'd been. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The doctor's appointment, continued negotiations, the ongoing question of trust and safety, and how to reconcile two very different visions of what our life together should look like. But tonight, I was safe, fed, warm, and for the first time in 7 months, not entirely alone. It would have to be enough. Dr. Sarah Harrison's office was nothing like the free clinic I'd been attending. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private garden, tasteful artwork lined the walls, and the waiting room furniture looked like it belonged in someone's living room rather than a medical office. "Ms. Mitchell." A nurse appeared, smiling warmly. "Dr. Harrison is ready for you. And Mr. Roberts, you're welcome to join her if she'd like." I looked at Anthony, who'd been sitting beside me in careful silence since James had driven us here. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept flexing as if resisting the urge to reach for mine. "Come on," I said. Relief washed across his face as he stood and followed us back. Dr. Harrison was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes and the sort of calm competence that made you instantly trust her. She shook both our hands with equal warmth. "Kate, Anthony, it's wonderful to meet you both." Let's get you up on the exam table and we'll see how baby is doing, shall we? The examination was thorough in a way the clinic visits had never been. Dr. Harrison took her time, asking detailed questions about my symptoms, my energy levels, my nutrition. She listened to the baby's heartbeat with an expression of professional satisfaction, her hands gentle as she measured my stomach. "Baby sounds perfect," she announced. "Strong heartbeat. Good positioning. You're measuring right on track for 22 weeks. She rolled her stool back, making notes on her tablet. "However, your labs from yesterday concern me. Your iron is significantly low, and your B12 is borderline. We need to address that immediately." "I've been taking prenatal vitamins," I said defensively. "Over-the-counter ones aren't always absorbed effectively, especially if you have underlying deficiencies." She pulled up images on her screen. "I'd like to start you on prescription supplements and possibly IV iron therapy, if the oral supplements don't improve things quickly enough. Low iron can lead to complications during pregnancy and delivery that we want to avoid." Anthony leaned forward. "What kind of complications?" "Increased risk of preterm labor, low birth weight, postpartum complications for mom." Dr. Harrison spoke directly to both of us, including him without diminishing my role. "All manageable with proper treatment, but treatment needs to start now." "Whatever she needs," Anthony said. "Cost isn't a factor." Dr. Harrison smiled. "So I gathered. I also want to discuss nutrition, sleep, stress management, all the things that impact pregnancy health beyond just medical intervention." She turned to me. "Tell me honestly, Kate, how are you feeling day to day?" The question, asked with genuine concern, broke through my defensive walls. "Exhausted, constantly. I work on my feet 4 or 5 days a week, and by evening I can barely keep my eyes open." "And before the last few days? When you were still in your previous living situation?" I glanced at Anthony, who had gone very still. "Before, I was working 6 days, sometimes 7. Double shifts when I could get them. I needed the money for prenatal care," Dr. Harrison finished gently. "I understand. But that level of stress and exhaustion isn't sustainable or healthy. Your body is already working overtime growing a human. Adding that much physical labor on top of it, without adequate nutrition or rest, is a recipe for problems." "I didn't have a choice." "You do now," Anthony said quietly. "You don't have to work yourself to exhaustion anymore." Dr. Harrison looked between us, clearly picking up on the complexity of our situation. "Here's my medical recommendation. Reduced work hours, no more than 3 days per week and no double shifts. Proper supplementation, which we'll monitor with weekly labs for the next month. 8 hours of sleep per night, minimum. And stress reduction, meditation, gentle exercise, whatever helps you feel calm." "I can do that," I said, already calculating how to make it work while keeping some independence. "Good. I also want to schedule more frequent checkups than usual, given the deficiencies we're addressing. Every 2 weeks instead of monthly." She smiled. "The nice thing about being in my practice is that I'm accessible. You can call or message any time if concerns come up. No waiting days for return calls like at the clinic." After the examination, Dr. Harrison walked us to the checkout area where a receptionist handed me a folder of information and prescription slips. "One more thing," the doctor said, pulling me aside slightly while Anthony spoke with the receptionist. "I know family situations can be complicated. If you ever need to talk to me privately, without him present, just say the word. My job is your health and the baby's health, and that includes emotional well-being." The offer was kindly meant, but it stung a little. "We're working things out." "I'm glad to hear it." She squeezed my arm. "But the offer stands. Take care of yourself, Kate." In the car, Anthony pulled out his phone and started typing before we'd even left the parking lot. "What are you doing?" "Messaging the estate manager, making sure your bedroom has blackout curtains for better sleep, ordering a new mattress that's better for pregnancy, arranging for the kitchen to stock the foods Dr. Harrison recommended." He looked up. Unless you'd prefer to handle it yourself? I thought about the relief of having someone else manage those details, then felt guilty for the relief. I can order my own food. I know you can, but you don't have to. He pocketed his phone. Remember what we discussed? Compromise? You let me take care of practical things, and in exchange, I don't hover or make decisions you want to make yourself. Is that fair to you? Fair to me would be moving you back into the penthouse where I can check on you every hour. A slight smile. This is compromise. James drove us back to the estate in comfortable silence. I watched the city give way to the suburbs, then to the more rural area where Anthony's property sprawled across acres of carefully maintained grounds. It still felt surreal, this life I'd stumbled back into. I need to make a call, Anthony said as we pulled up to the main house. Will you be okay getting back to the guest house on your own? I think I can manage the 50-yard walk, I said dryly. He smiled, that genuine smile I was seeing more frequently. I'll check on you later. Rest, Kate. Doctor's orders. I did try to rest, curling up on the comfortable sofa in the guest house with a book I'd found on the shelf. But my mind wouldn't settle. The doctor's appointment had made everything more real somehow. The baby wasn't just an abstract concept anymore, but a person we were both responsible for. A person who needed things I couldn't provide alone. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Helen stood there with a younger woman I didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell, this is Carla. She's a nutritionist who works with Dr. Harrison's practice. Mr. Roberts asked her to stop by to discuss meal planning. I stared at them. He hired a nutritionist? Just for a consultation, Carla said cheerfully. To make sure you're getting optimal nutrition for you and baby. It'll only take about 30 minutes if you're willing. What could I say? That I didn't want professional help ensuring my baby was healthy. I stepped aside and let them in. Carla was efficient and kind, asking about my food preferences and aversions, explaining what nutrients were most important at this stage of pregnancy, making notes about meal plans that the estate kitchen could prepare. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like one more burden lifted. After they left, I called Lucy. Okay, so update, she demanded. How's life in the fancy guest house? Has he locked you in a tower yet? No tower. But he did hire a nutritionist to make sure I'm eating properly. That's actually kind of sweet, in a controlling rich person way. That's the problem, I admitted. Everything he does is this weird mix of genuinely caring and subtly controlling. I can't tell where concern ends and possession begins. Maybe they're the same thing for him. I thought about Anthony's mother, the bomb meant for his father, the way violence had shaped his understanding of love and protection. Maybe they are, but I don't know if I can live with that. Are you falling for him again? The question caught me off guard. Was I? Or was I just grateful for the relief from struggle, seduced by comfort and care after months of neither? I don't know, I said honestly. I think I'm falling for the man he's being right now. But I don't know if that's who he really is, or just a performance to get what he wants. Then keep your eyes open, Lucy advised. Trust your gut, and remember you have options, even if right now they don't feel like great ones. That evening, Anthony appeared at my door with takeout bags from a Thai place I'd mentioned liking months ago. Peace offering, he said, for overwhelming you today with doctors and nutritionists and general interference. You remember I like Thai food? I remember everything. He held up the bags. May I come in? Or would you prefer to eat alone? I stepped aside, letting him enter. We spread the food on the small kitchen table, and for a while we just ate in comfortable silence. I know I'm doing too much, he said finally. Helen told me you looked overwhelmed after Carla left. When Dr. Harrison listed all the things that could go wrong if you don't get proper care, I panicked. I needed to fix it immediately. You can't fix everything, Anthony. I can try. He set down his fork. My mother's pregnancy with me was difficult. She had complications, spent months on bed rest. My father told me later that he felt helpless, unable to do anything but watch her suffer. I swore if I ever had a child, I'd make sure the mother had every possible advantage, every resource, every comfort. I'm not your mother. No, you're the woman I love who's carrying my daughter. That makes you infinitely more precious. He reached across the table, taking my hand. Tell me how to help without smothering you. Teach me how to care without controlling. Start by asking instead of arranging. Would you like a nutritionist? Instead of, here's a nutritionist I hired. He winced. Fair point. I'll work on that. And trust that I'm competent to make decisions. I kept myself and this baby alive for 7 months on my own. I'm not completely helpless. I never thought you were helpless. His thumb traced circles on my palm. I think you're incredibly strong. Too strong sometimes, trying to carry everything alone when you don't have to. After dinner, we moved to the sofa. I curled into the corner, and Anthony sat at the opposite end, respecting the space between us, even as his eyes kept drifting to me like he couldn't help himself. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. Why didn't you tell me the truth about your mother when we were together before? You said cancer, but it was murder. Why lie? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I wanted to keep you separate from that part of my life. The violence, the danger. I wanted you to see me as Anthony who loved art and good wine, not Anthony Roberts whose mother was murdered by people trying to hurt his father. But that's who you are, both parts. I know that now. I was trying to protect you from reality, which was stupid because reality has a way of making itself known. He shifted slightly toward me. I won't lie to you again, Kate. Not about the business, not about the dangers, not about who I am or what I do. You deserve the truth, even when it's ugly. Okay, I believed him, which surprised me. Then tell me about those men watching my apartment. Have you found out who they were? His expression darkened. They were Bratva, Russian organization I've had dealings with in the past. Apparently, word got out that you'd left me, and they saw an opportunity to apply pressure. What kind of pressure? The kind where they grab you and use you to negotiate favorable terms on territorial disputes. His voice was carefully controlled. Which is why I can't apologize for having you brought here. If they'd gotten to you first, I understand. And I did, which was perhaps the most frightening realization. Understanding his world meant accepting it in some way. Are they still a threat? They were, past tense. I made it very clear that you're under my protection again. Touching you would be a declaration of war they can't afford. He met my eyes. You're safe now, Kate. I promise you that. What did you have to do to make them back off? Nothing you need to know about. Anthony? No. Firm but not harsh. I said I wouldn't lie to you, but I also won't burden you with details that will keep you up at night. Trust that it's handled and you're safe. That has to be enough. It should have bothered me, the secrecy. But part of me was relieved not to know. Sometimes willful ignorance was easier than complicity. I'm tired, I said, which was true. The day had been long and emotionally exhausting. I'll go. He stood, but hesitated. Can I? Would you mind if I said goodnight to her? To the baby? The request was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that I couldn't refuse. Okay. He knelt beside the sofa, his hand hovering over my stomach. May I? I nodded, and he placed his palm gently over where our daughter was growing. His hand was warm, large enough to span most of my bump. Hey, little one, he said softly. It's your dad. I know you can't hear me yet, not really, but I wanted to tell you that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm going to make sure you and your mom have everything you need. Always. The baby kicked, a firm press against his hand. Anthony's expression transformed, wonder and joy, and something almost like fear crossing his face. She kicked me. She does that a lot in the evenings. Can I do this again? Check in with her? You can try, I said, feeling something in my chest loosen. But she's got her own schedule. Sometimes she cooperates, sometimes she doesn't. He stayed there for another moment, hand on my stomach, looking at me with such open emotion that I had to look away. Thank you, he said, finally standing, for letting me be part of this. After he left, I climbed the stairs to bed, my mind full of conflicting emotions: fear and safety, independence and care, love and caution. I fell asleep to the baby's kicks, wondering what kind of world I was bringing her into, and whether Anthony and I could build something strong enough to protect her from the dangers that came with his name. 3 weeks at the estate changed everything and nothing. I settled into a routine that felt simultaneously luxurious and constraining. Morning walks in the gardens, afternoons either at the cafe or in the studio Anthony had built, evenings sometimes shared with him over dinner, sometimes spent alone in the guest house. The supplements Dr. Harrison prescribed started working. My energy returned, the constant exhaustion lifted. Even my skin looked healthier. But comfortable wasn't the same as free. You look better, Lucy observed during my shift at the cafe. We were in the lull between lunch and dinner, reorganizing supplies in the back. Less like you're about to collapse mid-order. Better food, better sleep. I restocked napkins with methodical focus. Turns out not working yourself to death has benefits. And the situation with Mr. Tall, dark, and possessive? I glanced toward the dining room where James sat in his usual corner booth, reading a newspaper but obviously there to watch over me. Anthony's compromise. James drove me to work and stayed nearby, but didn't hover or interfere. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Lucy bumped my shoulder with hers. But seriously, are you happy? Was I? The question felt impossible to answer. Happy felt too simple for what I was experiencing. Safe? Yes. Cared for, definitely. But happy? I don't know, I admitted. Sometimes I am. When Anthony and I talk about the baby, when he makes me laugh, when he looks at me like I'm the only thing that matters in his world. But then I remember I'm only there because he didn't give me a real choice and I don't know what I'm feeling anymore. That's honest, at least. My phone buzzed. A text from Anthony. Board meeting running late. Can James bring you back whenever you're done? I'll have dinner waiting. I showed Lucy the message. See, sweet and controlling in the same breath. Or just a guy making sure his pregnant girlfriend gets home safely and fed. She raised an eyebrow. You're looking for problems, Kate. Or I'm being realistic about what this relationship actually is. A customer came in, ending our conversation. But Lucy's words stayed with me through the rest of my shift. Was I manufacturing problems to protect myself from getting too comfortable? Or was I being appropriately cautious about a man who'd essentially kidnapped me, even if he'd dressed it up as protection? James drove me back to the estate as the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Instead of dropping me at the guest house, he continued to the main house. Mr. Roberts asked if you'd join him in the study, he explained. I found Anthony on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian that I'd learned meant he was either very angry or very stressed. He gestured for me to sit, finishing his conversation with what sounded like a series of sharp instructions before hanging up. Problem? I asked. Several. He poured himself a drink, then seemed to think better of it, and set the glass down untouched. The Italians are pushing back on the new distribution agreement. The Russians are making noise again despite our understanding, and one of my restaurant managers was caught skimming profits. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it from its usual perfect style. It's been a day. Want to talk about it? He looked at me with surprise. You want to hear about my business problems? You asked me to understand your world. Hard to do that if you never let me in. I kicked off my shoes, tucking my feet under me on the sofa. Besides, you look like you need to vent to someone. So he did. Anthony talked through his day with a frankness I hadn't expected, explaining the complicated dynamics of his various business interests, both legitimate and less so. He didn't hide the criminal elements, but framed them in context. The restaurant manager was stealing from his employees' tip pool, not from Anthony, which was why the consequences would be severe. The distribution issue involved keeping harmful drugs out of certain neighborhoods while allowing less dangerous operations to continue. Nothing was simple or entirely black and white. Does it bother you? He asked when he'd finished. Knowing the details? It should probably bother me more than it does, I admitted. But I keep thinking about what you said about protecting people who depend on you. It's not exactly legal, but it's not entirely evil either. That's the rationalization I use to sleep at night. He smiled without humor. That I'm the lesser evil. That without me, worse men would control these territories and care less about collateral damage. Is that true? Mostly. He came to sit beside me on the sofa, close but not touching. I've worked hard to minimize the harm my operations cause. No human trafficking, no violence against civilians, no protection rackets that actually hurt small business owners. But I'm not naive enough to think that makes me a good person. Nobody's entirely good or entirely bad, I said. We're all just making choices and living with consequences. Spoken like someone who spent a lot of time thinking about moral ambiguity. Spoken like someone who fell in love with a complicated man and had to figure out how to reconcile that with who she thought she was. Anthony went very still. Fell in love. Past tense? I realized what I'd said, the admission I'd made without meaning to. I don't know what tense we're in anymore. Can I tell you what tense I'm in? He shifted to face me fully. I'm in present continuous. I'm loving you right now, this moment. I was loving you this morning when I checked on you before you woke up because I can't help needing to see you're safe. I'll be loving you tonight when you're back in the guest house and I'm lying awake wishing you were in my bed instead. I'm always in the present tense when it comes to you, Kate. You checked on me this morning? I didn't hear you. That was the point. He touched my face gently. I'm trying to give you space, respect your independence, but I can't help needing to see you're okay. So I compromise with myself, I check, but I don't wake you. I watch, but I don't interfere. That's still kind of creepy, Anthony. I know, I'm working on it. His hand dropped. Dr. Harrison said you're doing much better. The supplements are working, your numbers are improving. You talked to my doctor? She sends me updates. I thought you knew. I didn't. I should have been angry, but mostly I was tired of fighting the constant push and pull between his need to know everything and my need for privacy. Can you at least ask before arranging things that involve my medical care? Fair. I'm sorry. He actually looked contrite. I'll copy you on future communications with Dr. Harrison. Thank you. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Anthony asked, Will you stay for dinner? I had the kitchen prepare that pasta dish you liked. I should have said no. Should have maintained the boundaries between guest house and main house, between my life and his. But the truth was, I was tired of eating alone. Okay. Dinner was comfortable in a way our previous meals hadn't been. We talked about art, a new exhibition opening downtown that he wanted to take me to if I was interested. Books. He'd been reading a thriller I'd recommended months ago and wanted to discuss the ending. The baby, her increasingly aggressive kicks, the question of names we both kept avoiding. I like Clara, I said, surprising myself. It was my grandmother's name. Clara Roberts. He tested the name. I like it. Classic, but not old-fashioned. Clara Isabel Roberts, I amended. Isabel was my mother's middle name. Clara Isabel Roberts, he repeated, his voice soft. She sounds like someone important already. After dinner, Anthony walked me back to the guest house as had become our routine. At the door, he hesitated. I have to go to Chicago tomorrow. Business meeting I can't postpone. I'll be gone 2 days, maybe 3. He looked uncomfortable. James will be here if you need anything, and you have my number, obviously. I'll be fine, Anthony. I managed alone for 7 months, remember? That's what worries me. He touched my face. Promise me you'll be careful. Don't go anywhere without James. Don't live my life? I pulled away slightly. You can't helicopter parent me every time you leave town. I can try. Well, stop trying. I'll be fine. He looked like he wanted to argue, but managed to restrain himself. Call me if anything feels wrong. Anything at all. I will. He kissed me goodnight, soft and lingering, his hand gentle on my stomach as if saying goodbye to Clara too. Then he was gone, walking back toward the main house with his phone already out, no doubt making arrangements for his trip. I should have felt relief at his absence, at 2 or 3 days of not navigating the complex dynamics between us. Instead, I felt strangely bereft. The next morning, I woke to a text from Anthony. Left early. James will drive you to work if you want to go in. Or you can take the day. Your choice. Miss you already. I did go to work, partly because I missed the routine, partly because staying on the estate without Anthony there felt too much like being alone in a very expensive prison. Lucy noticed my mood immediately. Trouble in paradise? He's in Chicago for business. I should be happy to have space. But you're not? But I'm not, I admitted. I miss him, which is stupid, because I've spent weeks resenting his constant presence. That's not stupid. That's called having feelings. Lucy refilled the coffee machine. Maybe you're further into this than you want to admit. Maybe I was. And that terrified me more than anything else. The possibility that I was falling for Anthony all over again, falling for the life he offered, falling into the trap of comfort over freedom. I was wiping down tables when the door chimed and a woman walked in. Tall, elegant, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. She looked around the cafe with the expression of someone slumming in unfamiliar territory. "Can I help you?" I asked. Her gaze fixed on me with laser focus. "You're Kate Wilson, or should I say Katerina Mitchell?" Every instinct screamed danger. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. Or rather, I know of you." She settled into a booth with the air of someone used to owning every room she entered. "I'm Natasha Volkov. Perhaps Anthony has mentioned me?" He hadn't. Which meant either she wasn't important enough to mention, or she was important in ways he didn't want me to know about. I don't think so. No, he wouldn't have. Her smile was cold. Men like Anthony compartmentalize. The world they do business in and the world they keep their women in rarely overlap. I should have walked away. Should have called James, who was sitting in his usual booth pretending not to notice this interaction. But something kept me there. "What do you want?" "To give you some advice, woman to woman." She leaned back, crossing her legs with deliberate elegance. "Anthony Roberts is a dangerous man to love. You know that already, obviously, or you wouldn't have run from him. But what you might not know is that men in his position don't allow attachments that make them vulnerable. Eventually, he'll have to choose between you and his empire. And he'll choose the empire. You don't know that. I know men like him. I was married to one before he got himself killed by not understanding that love is a weakness in this world." She pulled a business card from her purse, sliding it across the table. "When you need help leaving, and you will, call me. I have resources Anthony doesn't control. Contacts that can help you disappear properly this time." She stood, smoothing her suit. "One more thing. The men who were watching your old apartment, they were mine. A test to see if Anthony was serious about protecting you, or if you were just another temporary distraction. The fact that you're here tells me he's serious, which makes you an even greater liability to him in the long run. I don't understand. You will. She headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and congratulations on the pregnancy. I hope the child doesn't inherit its father's tendency toward ruthlessness, or its mother's tendency toward self-deception. Then she was gone, leaving me standing in the middle of the cafe with a business card and a head full of questions. James appeared at my elbow. You need to call Mr. Roberts. Now. Why? Because that woman is Natasha Volkov. She runs the Russian operations on the East Side. And if she's making contact with you, it's not a social call. I called Anthony from the cafe's back room, my hands shaking slightly. Kate, what's wrong? His voice was sharp with immediate concern. A woman just came to the cafe. Natasha Volkov. She said, I recounted the conversation, every word I could remember. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'm coming back. Tonight. Anthony, you have meetings. Nothing is more important than this. I heard him moving, probably already heading to the airport. Stay with James. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. I'll be there in 6 hours. She gave me her card. Said to call when I need help leaving. Throw it away. What if I don't want to? Another silence, this one heavier. Do you want to leave, Kate? Is that what this is about? I don't know what I want anymore, I admitted, but I don't like other people telling me what my choices are. You do it. She does it. Everyone acts like I'm a prize to be won or protected, not a person who can make my own decisions. You're right, and I'm sorry. His voice softened. But please, for now, just be careful. Natasha doesn't make moves without purpose. If she's approaching you, it's part of a larger game. What game? That's what I need to figure out. 6 hours, Kate. I'll explain everything when I get back. After we hung up, I stared at Natasha's card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, legitimacy disguising whatever lay beneath. I should throw it away like Anthony said. Instead, I tucked it into my pocket. Anthony returned before midnight, walking into the guest house without knocking, something he'd never done before. The breach of our agreement should have bothered me. Instead, I was just relieved to see him. Tell me again exactly what she said. He was still in his travel clothes, looking exhausted and wired in equal measure. I went through it all again, every detail I could remember. He listened with absolute focus, his expression growing progressively darker. The men at your apartment, he said when I finished. That was her testing me, making sure I'd react, that I'd bring you here. Why would she want you to bring me here? Because it establishes a pattern. I have a weakness, and that weakness is you. He started pacing. In our world, weaknesses are leverage. Natasha knows that if she can prove I'll drop everything to protect you, she can manipulate me through you. So what do? We? He stopped pacing, looking at me intently. You're asking what we do? You said you wanted me to understand your world. Hard to do that if I don't participate in solving problems when they arise. Something shifted in his expression. You realize participating means accepting certain realities about how we handle threats. I'm beginning to. I stood, moving closer to him. Natasha scared me, Anthony. Not because of what she said, but because of how certain she sounded that you'd eventually choose the empire over me. Is she right? No. The answer was immediate, unequivocal. I would burn the entire empire before I'd give you up. That's not better. That's just a different kind of destructive choice. Then what do you want me to say? Frustration bled into his voice. That I can have both? That love and power coexist peacefully? They don't, Kate. They never have. Every choice I make affects hundreds of people who depend on me for their livelihoods. But you and Clara..." His hand moved to my stomach. "You're what I'm building all of it for. What's the point of an empire if I have no one to share it with? You could choose differently, walk away from it all, and let men like Natasha's late husband take over. Men who don't care about collateral damage or civilian casualties." He shook his head. "I'm not naive enough to think my absence would make the world better. It would just make it more dangerous for everyone, including you. So we're trapped. You by responsibility, me by loving you." "You love me?" The question was quiet, hopeful. "I don't want to." I touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble he hadn't had time to shave. "I've spent weeks trying not to, but I think I do anyway. Present continuous, like you said." He pulled me close, careful of my bump, his face in my hair. "I'll handle Natasha. She's overstepping, and she knows it. This ends now." "How?" "Let me worry about that." I pulled back enough to look at him. No more compartmentalizing. If I'm in this, I'm all in. Tell me your plan." He studied me for a long moment. Then, "I'm going to make it clear that you're not leverage to be used. That touching you, approaching you, even thinking about you means war. And I'm going to demonstrate what war with me looks like in a way she won't forget. Violence. Proportional response to a threat against my family." His hand remained on my stomach. "She sent men to watch you while you were pregnant and vulnerable. That's not a business move. That's a declaration of intent. I respond, or I look weak. And weakness in this world gets people killed. People like me. People like you," he confirmed. "I wish I could handle this differently. Wish I could just talk and negotiate and find peaceful resolution. But that's not the language Natasha speaks. She understands power and consequences. So, I'll give her both." I should have been horrified. The old Kate, the one who'd fled 7 months ago, would have been. But this Kate, the one who'd survived alone, who'd learned that the world wasn't always fair or just, understood the terrible logic. "Do what you need to do," I said. "But promise me something. Anything. Promise me Clara never has to know this side of your world, that we protect her from this. I promise. She'll have choices I never did. Freedom I've never had." His forehead touched mine. "We'll build something better for her." The next 3 days were tense. Anthony disappeared for long stretches, returning with expressions that told me things were being handled in ways I probably didn't want to know about. James's presence intensified. More men appeared on the estate, subtle but obvious to anyone looking. Then, on the 4th day, Anthony appeared at the guest house with flowers and an actual smile. "It's done. Natasha has withdrawn her interest. You won't be hearing from her again." "What did you do?" "Demonstrated that the cost of using you as leverage was greater than any potential benefit." He set the flowers on the kitchen counter. "She's smart enough to know when to back down." "That's it? It's over?" "That particular problem is over. There will be others." He pulled me close. "There will always be others, Kate. That's the reality of my world. But I'll handle them all the same way, by making it clear that you and Clara are the line no one crosses." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the weight of understanding what my life would be if I stayed with Anthony. Constant low-level threat, periodic high-level crisis, and his protection as both comfort and cage. "I need some air," I said. "Want to walk with me?" We walked through the gardens in the evening light, the same path we'd walked a dozen times. But this time felt different, heavy with unspoken questions. "Ask me," Anthony said finally. "Whatever you're thinking." "Can we really do this? Build a life together? Raise Clara? Pretend that your world doesn't touch ours?" "No," he said honestly. "We can't pretend. But we can build walls high enough and strong enough that she's protected from the worst of it, and we can make sure she knows she's loved above everything else. What if it's not enough? Then we adjust. We figure it out together. He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. I know I'm asking you to accept a lot. Danger, complexity, constant awareness that threats exist. But I'm also offering you everything I have: protection, resources, devotion, a family. Is it a fair trade? Probably not. But it's the only one I can make. I looked at this man who'd upended my life twice now, first by sweeping me into his world, then by refusing to let me leave it. This man who was both my greatest fear and my safest harbor. I'm still scared, I admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you careful. His hand found mine. But don't let it keep you from living, from loving, from building something worth protecting. Is that what we're doing? Building something worth protecting? I am. He pulled me close. Every day, every choice, every move I make, it's all about building a world where you and Clara can thrive, where you're safe enough to paint in your studio, where she's free enough to become whoever she wants to be. That's a lot of pressure to put on one relationship. Maybe, but I've never been good at doing things halfway. We walked back to the guest house as darkness fell and the estate lights began to glow against the approaching night. At my door, Anthony hesitated. Can I stay tonight? Just sleep beside you, I need... He stopped, looking vulnerable in a way I rarely saw. I need to know you're here, that you're safe, that this is real. I should have said no, should have maintained the boundaries between his world and mine. But I was tired of boundaries, tired of protecting myself from something I wanted anyway. Okay. We lay in bed together for the first time in 8 months, my back against his chest, his arm draped carefully over my waist, hand resting on my bump. Clara kicked against his palm, and I felt him smile against my shoulder. She's active tonight. She likes you. She doesn't even know me yet. She knows your voice. She knows when you're near. She kicks more when you're here. Smart girl. He kissed my shoulder. Gets that from her mother. We lay in comfortable silence, listening to each other breathe, feeling Clara's occasional movements between us. I don't forgive you yet, I said into the darkness, for forcing my hand, for taking away choices, for being who you are. I know, but I'm going to try to build this life with you, try to trust that you'll keep us safe, try to be what Clara needs even if I'm not sure what that looks like. That's all I'm asking. His arm tightened slightly. Try with me, build with me, love me when you can, and tolerate me when you can't. That's a low bar. I'm working my way up from nothing. I'll take what I can get. I rolled over to face him, awkward with my bump between us. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this doesn't work, if I decide I can't live in your world, you'll let me go. Not chase me down again, not force me back, just let me go. Pain flashed in his eyes, but he nodded. I promise. If you genuinely want to leave after trying, after giving us a real chance, I'll let you go, but I'll still be in Clara's life. That's non-negotiable. I wouldn't ask you to stay away from your daughter. Then we have an agreement. He kissed me softly. Try, Kate. That's all I need. Try with me. So I did. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. We argued about his overprotectiveness, about my insistence on maintaining independence, about 100 small choices that tested our compromise. But we also laughed. Planned for Clara's arrival, painted together in the studio, built something that looked, increasingly, like a life. 6 weeks before my due date, Anthony woke me in the middle of the night. Marry me. I blinked sleep from my eyes. What? Marry me. Not because you have to. Not because I'm forcing you. Marry me because you want to build this family together. He was already holding a ring, the same one he'd shown me that night outside the cafe, the one I'd never given him an answer about. Anthony, it's 3 a.m. I know, but I've been lying here watching you sleep, watching Clara move, thinking about how much I love you both, and I don't want to wait anymore. He took my hand. Marry me, Kate. Be my wife. Let me be the father Clara's birth certificate says I am. Make this real and legal and permanent. This is insane. Probably, but that's never stopped me before. I looked at the ring, at his face, at the life we'd been building in this strange in-between space. What if I say no? Then I ask again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until you say yes. He smiled. I'm patient when it matters. You're impossible. That too, but I'm yours if you'll have me. I thought about all the reasons to say no. The danger, the complexity, the fact that I'd known him a total of maybe 16 months if you counted our time apart. I thought about Natasha's warning, about the empire he'd choose over me eventually. Then I thought about the way he looked at Clara's ultrasound photos, the way he'd built me a studio without being asked, the way he was trying, genuinely trying, to be better than his father, to build something worth passing down. Okay, you'll think about it? Okay, I'll marry you. I held out my hand. Put the ring on before I change my mind. He did, sliding it onto my finger with hands that shook slightly. Then he kissed me, deep and thorough and full of promise. I love you, he whispered against my lips. I'll love you forever. I'll protect you always. I'll be the man you need me to be. Even when I fail. Especially when I fail. I love you too. Present continuous. We married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the estate. Just close friends and family. Lucy stood beside me as maid of honor, still slightly overwhelmed by the whole situation. James was Anthony's best man, having graduated from bodyguard to friend in the months I'd known him. Father Thomas from my old church officiated, having been convinced that Anthony's soul wasn't entirely beyond redemption. He'd smiled at that, saying he'd take partial redemption over none at all. Clara arrived 2 weeks early, on a Tuesday morning when the gardens were in full bloom. Labor was long and difficult. Dr. Harrison had warned the anemia might complicate delivery, but Anthony never left my side. He held my hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement when I wanted to quit, and cried when they finally placed our daughter in my arms. She was perfect. Tiny and furious, and absolutely perfect. Clara Isabel Roberts, Anthony said, his voice rough with emotion as he touched her impossibly small hand. Welcome to the world, sweetheart. We've been waiting for you. In the quiet of the hospital room, with our daughter between us and the future uncertain but ours, I realized something. I'd been so focused on whether I could trust Anthony that I'd forgotten to ask whether I trusted myself. Trusted my judgment, my strength, my ability to build the life I wanted even in complicated circumstances. The answer, I discovered, was yes. Was our life perfect? No. Anthony was still overprotective, still made decisions without consulting me, still inhabited a world with sharp edges and dangerous corners. I still fought him on autonomy, still questioned choices, still occasionally wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But we were building something worth protecting, a family, a future, a kind of love that existed not despite the complications but alongside them. What are you thinking? Anthony asked, watching me watch Clara. That this is terrifying. Agreed. And that I'm glad we're doing it together. Me too. He leaned over, kissing my forehead, then Clara's. Me too. Outside the hospital window, The city stretched in all directions. The same city where I'd hidden, where I'd been found, where I'd run and been caught, and ultimately chosen to stay. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was ours. And it was enough. So, what did you think? Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and comment. Would you have made the same choice as her? Share with someone who loves these stories.